And this might sound a little controversial. It's not going to be. It has to do with the this whole thing about dead people voting. I was thinking about that. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. If I voted, if I did an absentee ballot on a week before the election, and then I died, would I be a dead person voting? And I'm thinking, actually, probably. And if you think about, there's 330 million people in this country. How many people, with the basic death rate statistics, how many people died before an election that happened, and over time, how? Well, wait a minute. Oh, so actually, it's quite possible that dead people kind of vote in every election, not because of some crazy thing, but because of, and so that, but what it brought up for me was this idea of questions. It seems to me that in this country, we don't ask great questions. So like, if the question is, do dead people vote? Well, the answer to that question is probably yes. But is that really the question? No, it's not. The question is, has somebody appropriated ballots that were meant for people who are dead and then used them? Now, what that brings up, which is really the point of all this, is the value of questions, and then what happens. So let's just walk this through. So if we're really going to ask this question, have people appropriated ballots that they weren't supposed to have and then filled them out in the name of somebody who's actually dead? That becomes more complicated. And so then to answer that question, it's a more complicated answer, and it's a more complicated process to actually find that out. And my concern, this is an old concern, it's been around for a while, is that we really don't take the time to kind of answer questions in this culture. We're invited into this, blah, blah, blah. Gonna do it now. Oh, what's the answer? Oh, move to here, and this. Now we're doing this. Now onto this. Blah, blah, blah. What's happening now? Who's streaming? Who's trending? Blah, 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 blah. It's this pace of life right now that ultimately, which is fine if you like a quick pace, that's great. Except we got to think about the effects of that pace. And in a lot of ways, the effects of that pace is that there's a lot of misunderstandings. There's a lot of fear that's generated. There's a lot of crap that comes up because we're just actually not taking the time to sort of kind of figure things out. I was talking to one of my folks earlier this week about, where to get good information that's not inherently biased, but it's still, even if you get a place where you can actually get information, it's still just information. What that ultimately means for you is something you got to kind of sort out, and it kind of takes time. You got to kind of think about. So am I going to get, so if in fact, apparently dead people probably vote a lot, because ultimately there's absentee ballots that generally come from, really come from like older people in nursing homes and stuff. And so, not that they're the most likely people to die statistically in any way. However, they are kind of older, so it certainly is possible. And so if somebody does an absentee ballot the Thursday before the election, does that mean their vote doesn't count if they die before that Tuesday? Or how does that all work? And so those are kind of complex questions, and you kind of got to figure out what the laws are, and you got to kind of figure out what the laws are where you are, and maybe it's different in every state. And then you got to kind of be talking to people about stuff. And it's not something that we do. I mean, how many times have you found yourself really upset about something that you just found out about and actually not done anything to find out what's actually going on? And then you just carry that upset with you, and then that upset compounds the next upset and so on. But because why? Because it takes time to kind of figure out what's really going on. And it's like, we're invited in this culture to not really value the taking of that time, and so we don't. And so, yeah, so this is an invitation to think about the questions that we ask, and are they really good questions? I can't believe, why did you do that? That's not really a question. I'm really curious about why you did that. That's a question. And so why did you do that? How can you possibly blah, 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 blah? Those aren't questions. And so many times these are the kinds of questions that we hear about when it's either it's not a question, or the question, do dead people vote in the election? Not a great question, because ultimately there's a million different answers to that question. What do you actually really want to know? So if I think about three things, what do I really want to know? Why? And is it really a question? Because sometimes if I really want to know a thing, and that's why I ask a question, I'm already walking into that with an agenda. Not that it's a bad thing. I mean, I'd kind of be interested in this whole the law around, if you die at a certain point in the context of the election, does your vote count? And like for example, if you vote on a Tuesday and the ballots aren't completely counted until Friday, and you die on a Wednesday, is that vote still real? You know, these are really there's a level of complexity here. It's kind of just the way we do lots of things, but there would definitely be a bias in the context of that question, because there's the third kind of question is really asking a question you have no idea what the answer is, and that it takes us into this, one of my favorite places, is sort of territory of not knowing, where we can kind of share together, join a place of going into this place of, you know, nobody's really ever asked that question, and so then nobody really knows the answer to that question. So then, oh wow, we get to kind of figure out some cool stuff. So yeah, what do you want to know and why, and is there also a kind of a question that you can ask that brings you into this territory of this kind of magical place of what in narrative talk about the not yet known but possible. So anyway, something to think about. How about better questions, and thinking about the questions we ask and why we're asking them, and sometimes when we think we're asking a question and we're really not. And better questions can create all kinds of really amazing possibilities, but we got to kind of come back to the possibility of asking better questions, and really the idea of kind of taking more time to sort of sort stuff out in life, and not thinking that the answer's got to come tomorrow or in 5 minutes or yesterday. Or so anyway, hope everyone's having a great day. I'll be back tomorrow with Possibility Friday, and